You always think about that cliche of, the guy who has an affair with the secretary at work and buys a sports car. That's like the cliche version of the midlife crisis. But just because you're having one doesn't mean you have to, do destructive, hurtful things, right? Hey YouTube, it's Kevin from Kevin in the Philippines. Thank you so much for clicking on my channel. If we haven't met yet, or you're new to the channel, I grew up here in the Philippines as a kid in the 80s and 90s, and then I came back later in life here, and now I live here now, kind of semi-retired. So my channel is focused on life in the Philippines, going back to when I was growing up here as a kid, with stories about things that happened to me when I was here, and then stories about things that are happening to me today as I'm here in semi-retired mode, I guess you could say it is. The story for today's video is kind of a personal one, and I actually wanted to try to come to kind of a quiet place, maybe a scenic place like behind me here. And of course there's music playing in the background somewhere down the mountain here. So hopefully I'm talking over that music and you don't hear it so much. But anyway, it's kind of a personal story, and this one is about a midlife crisis. Ooh, kind of a scary thing to think about, to admit to strangers on the internet that you had one, because I don't know, I feel like it's something that not a lot of people talk about. Little background, I came out to the Philippines in the summer of 2022. I had been wanting to visit the Philippines for a long time, and I finally made it out here again in 2022, and I had just finished kind of a stressful job that summer. I was working on a TV show, and the TV show wrapped, and I was kind of tired and stressed out, and I said, I've got to go back to the Philippines. And for me, that was an escape. It was like I was traveling again, and which is something I love. I feel like traveling just fuels my soul. But anyway, I got back to the Philippines, and I went through an experience here, and I think now in retrospect I know what it was, and it was a midlife crisis. Maybe a small one, but it's still a real one. Anyway, so what is a midlife crisis? Who has them, who can have them? I'm not an expert exactly. I don't know exactly, all the details, but I found an article online. I think it was actually from Forbes, like back in 2017. And the point of the article was how to identify if you're having or had a midlife crisis. And I thought it was really interesting. So I grabbed some of the points from that article. The first one is questioning everything. And so the idea is, did you get to a point in your life where you did start questioning everything? In other words, decisions you had made that led you up to this point, career, life stuff, marriage, kids, all that. Are you starting to question that? The other one was, are you acting impulsively, which is interesting. And did you make any big changes? So, I'm reading the article and I'm thinking, oh, maybe that was me. Was going to the Philippines in the summer of 2022 an impulsive thing? Was I acting, irrationally or something? You're successful but not satisfied. So that's an interesting one. I mean, I don't know exactly if I would say I wasn't satisfied, but I was stressed out. I had spent over 10 years, over a decade building my career in film and television, and I thought, hey, have I achieved everything I want to achieve? You're always growing, you're always learning, and I was actually one of the biggest proponents of that idea. But after a decade, you start to wonder, okay, I've made some moderate success, but am I, happy? So that was running through my mind, definitely. Okay, overwhelmed by the time you have left. That's a big one. There's just something that happens when you get midlife, and at that time in 22, I was 45 years old, and I do remember thinking, gosh, there's only a few, Lord willing, good decades left of me being healthy and being able to do fun things like hike to waterfalls and jump, 10 meters down into a river. I mean, I remember thinking, there's only a few years left, and I'm going to be healthy enough to be able to do this kind of stuff. So you start to think about the time you have left. That was on the list. Let's see. Maybe your life is on autopilot. I don't know if mine was on autopilot exactly, but I bet some of you out there may have experienced that. Anyway, this is just stuff that I was reflecting on, and I remember thinking, my dad's older than me. How come he never talked to me about this stuff? I'm not trying to shame my dad. I love my dad. But it's like he went through that period of his life as well. And one wonders, did he experience these kinds of feelings? But we never talked about that kind of stuff. Okay. How did I know, or how did I figure out that I had a midlife crisis? I'm pretty sure I know when that happened. And it was when I was talking to a friend of mine, actually a childhood friend of mine. I'm not going to say his name. I don't want to embarrass him, but he was, we were chatting and he was telling me about something that he experienced almost the same time that I did. And he basically just said, did I ever tell you about the time I had my sailing boat fantasy? And I was like, what? No. And basically he said, yeah, I just kind of went through this phase where, I wanted to get on a sailboat and just sail around the world and just forget everything and just, enjoy life on the sea. And I was like, oh, that sounds like midlife crisis feelings. That sounds exactly like some of the feelings that I was having when I went back to the Philippines. So anyway, I took that as a sign of confirmation that that I really did have that crisis, So going back to summer of 2022, I was coming out of a relationship that just didn't work out. And I had circled back to the idea of just starting over in the Philippines. And I also was listening to certain kinds of music at that time that was just speaking to me. I'm not going to say specifically what it was, but if you can relate to any of this, I think you could probably say, oh yeah, I did that too, man. There's just certain songs that a lot of them were older, like, from when I was younger. And those songs, suddenly had a different meaning for me because of my place in life. And again, I just had that yearning for a sense of travel. So I circled back to the idea of, I said, let me just go back to the Philippines and just really try to plug back into the feelings that I had when I was there as a young man, because that's what being in the Philippines feels like to me. It always reminds me of when I was young. Starting when I was 6 years old, I came here. So coming back to the Philippines kind of made sense when you might be going through kind of a midlife crisis like I did. Anyway, coincidentally, around the same time as my visit, I had met my now girlfriend Angie online, and it was a chance to meet her. And we got to actually travel together a little bit when I came for that visit, and that was part of it as well. And I was so happy, and it was so nice to be able to meet her and spend time with her. And then later that year, that fall, I asked her to be my girlfriend. What happened when I came here during this midlife crisis? Well, what happened was I was happier. I wasn't as stressed. And I remember it wasn't just memories coming back to me. It was a whole feeling, a whole wave of like, oh, this is where I belong. This is where I feel like I fit, and I understand the people and the culture, and I even speak some of the language. And it was just this comforting feeling, and it was just the antidote that I needed for what I believe was my midlife crisis. Anyway, a question for you now, your turn. Have you experienced anything like this? Have you ever gone through what might have been a midlife crisis, or maybe you were sure was a midlife crisis? Leave a comment below. I would love to hear feedback about this and see if there were other people out there. And there's something else I would like to add to the end of this, and that is, if you did go through a midlife crisis, or maybe you're going through one right now, it's good to know that you're not alone, right? Other people experience this, and other people have these feelings. I sure did. And, and also there's nothing wrong with you, right? Again, I'm not a life coach. I'm not a counselor or a psychologist or anything. I'm just somebody who likes to talk and tell stories. But I think it's normal, and I think depending on how you act, just like anything in life, how you respond to things, that's what matters the most, right? You always think about that cliche of, the guy who has an affair with the secretary at work and buys a sports car. That's like the cliche version of the midlife crisis. But just because you're having one doesn't mean you have to, do destructive, hurtful things, right? Anyway, I think that will wrap up this video. Thanks for listening. And if you like this video, or you felt like you gained something from it, please give it a like. It really helps me and helps my channel grow. And I want to say thanks, and also mabuhay, and I will see you again soon. Bye.